As Pope Francis approaches his 89th year and recent health challenges generate speculation about succession plans, the Catholic Church faces one of its most consequential transitions in decades. The upcoming conclave, whenever it occurs, will shape not just Catholicism's direction, but potentially influence global religious dynamics during a period of unprecedented change. Will this transition usher in a new era of renewal or represent what some traditionalists view as a final opportunity to redirect the Church's course? The selection of a pope is never merely an institutional process. It represents a spiritual discernment with implications extending far beyond Vatican walls. This understanding frames the extraordinary significance of the next conclave. The College of Cardinals has been dramatically reshaped during Francis's papacy, with approximately 70% of current voting cardinals appointed by Francis. The upcoming conclave will feature an electoral body with unprecedented diversity, both geographically and ideologically. Cardinals from the global south now outnumber their European counterparts for the first time in church history, potentially signaling shifts in how Catholic priorities might be expressed under new leadership. What makes this transition particularly consequential is the polarization that has characterized Catholic life during Francis's papacy. His emphasis on pastoral flexibility, environmental concerns, and economic justice has energized progressive Catholics while generating concern among traditionalists about doctrinal clarity. This tension has created what many observers describe as essentially two Catholic churches existing in uneasy relationship, a situation the next pope will immediately confront. Several distinct factions have emerged within the College of Cardinals, each with different visions for Catholicism's future. Some cardinals prioritize continuing Francis's emphasis on mercy, inclusion, and social justice. Others advocate returning to greater doctrinal clarity and liturgical traditionalism. Still others seek a middle path that maintains Francis's pastoral openness while providing clearer theological parameters. The geopolitical dimensions add further complexity. Cardinals from Africa and Asia often bring perspectives that combine theological conservatism with progressive economic views, a combination that transcends Western political categories. The growing influence of these voices could significantly reshape Catholic priorities in ways that challenge both progressive and traditionalist Western expectations. Beyond personalities and politics, the upcoming conclave will address fundamental questions about Catholicism's engagement with modernity. How should ancient tradition inform contemporary challenges? When do prophetic stances on economic and environmental issues require challenging political structures? How might unchanging doctrine find fresh expression in rapidly evolving cultural contexts? These questions transcend simple, progressive conservative divisions to address Catholicism's essential nature in the 21st century. For traditionalist Catholics who have expressed concern about certain directions during Francis's papacy, the upcoming conclave represents what some view as a critical juncture, perhaps even a final opportunity to redirect the Church toward clearer doctrinal expression. For progressive Catholics energized by Francis's emphasis on pastoral accompaniment and social justice, the conclave represents a chance to consolidate these priorities and further develop their institutional expression. As the Church approaches this momentous transition, Catholics across the ideological spectrum find themselves engaged in unprecedented prayer and reflection about their community's future direction. Will the next pope build directly on Francis's priorities, chart a more traditional course, or forge a new synthesis The answer will shape not just Catholicism, but potentially influence religious engagement with society's most pressing challenges for decades to come. The College of Cardinals that will gather for the next conclave represents the most diverse electoral body in church history. Pope Francis has appointed over 70% of current voting-eligible cardinals, dramatically reshaping the group that will select his successor. This transformation extends beyond mere numbers to fundamental shifts in geographical representation and theological perspectives. For the first time, European cardinals no longer constitute a majority of voting members. Cardinals from Latin America, Africa, and Asia now collectively outnumber their European counterparts, potentially signaling a continued shift of Catholicism's center of gravity away from its historical European foundations. This geographical diversification brings perspectives shaped by different cultural contexts, economic realities, and pastoral challenges. What makes this diversity particularly significant is how it transcends simple ideological categories. Cardinals from the global south often bring theological perspectives combining traditional doctrinal positions with progressive economic views. Many African cardinals, for instance, firmly uphold traditional teachings on marriage and sexuality, while simultaneously embracing Francis's critiques of economic systems that marginalize vulnerable populations. This combination challenges Western political frameworks that typically align theological conservatism with economic conservatism. Several distinct factions have emerged that will likely influence the conclave dynamics. The continuity faction strongly supports Francis's vision of a field hospital church focused on mercy and outreach to marginalized populations. These cardinals, including figures like Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna and Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich of Luxembourg, prioritize pastoral accompaniment over rigid doctrinal application. The reform of the Reform faction, while appreciating certain aspects of Francis's papacy, advocates for clearer doctrinal expression and greater liturgical reverence. Cardinals in this group, including figures like Cardinal Robert Serra, former prefect of divine worship, and Cardinal Raymond Burke, emphasize the importance of doctrinal clarity and traditional worship forms in maintaining Catholic identity amid secular pressures. A significant bridge builder contingent seeks synthesis between these approaches. These cardinals, including figures like Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Vienna and Cardinal Peter Erdo of Hungary, appreciate Francis's pastoral emphasis while seeking to articulate it within clearer theological frameworks. Their influence could prove decisive if the conclave becomes deadlocked between more polarized factions. The procedural aspects of the upcoming conclave will follow traditions refined over centuries while incorporating modern adaptations. Cardinals under 80 years old, currently numbering around 132, will gather in the Sistine Chapel following a papal death or resignation. After taking oaths of secrecy, they begin voting through a carefully structured process requiring a two-thirds majority for election. What distinguishes modern conclaves from historical predecessors is their relative brevity and insulation from external political pressures. While past conclaves sometimes lasted months and featured direct interference from European monarchs, recent elections have typically concluded within a few days and have successfully maintained independence from state influence. This procedural efficiency allows focus on the spiritual discernment at the heart of the process. The cardinals' deliberations will likely address several fundamental tensions within contemporary Catholicism. The relationship between unchanging doctrine and evolving pastoral application represents perhaps the central question. Francis's emphasis on case-by-case discernment in complex pastoral situations has energized some, while concerning others about potential doctrinal confusion. His successor will inevitably confront this tension between universal principles and particular applications. The Church's relationship with secular modernity represents another crucial consideration. How should Catholicism engage contemporary culture? Through prophetic challenge, selective adaptation, or some combination? Francis has demonstrated willingness to challenge economic and environmental practices while showing pastoral flexibility on certain personal moral questions. This complex approach has opened new dialogue opportunities while generating internal tensions his successor must address. Liturgical questions will undoubtedly influence deliberations as well. Francis's restrictions on the traditional Latin Mass through his 2021 document Traditionis Custodes reversed his predecessor's more accommodating approach. This decision reflected his concern about liturgical expressions, potentially signaling deeper ecclesiastical divisions, but it alienated communities attached to traditional forms. His successor will inherit this sensitive situation requiring both theological and pastoral discernment. Synodality, Francis's emphasis on consultative decision-making involving clergy and laity, represents another significant consideration. The ongoing Synod on Synodality has explored broader participation in church discernment while maintaining hierarchical authority. The next pope will determine whether this approach represents Catholicism's future governance model or a limited experiment in expanded consultation. Beyond these specific issues, the cardinals must consider Catholicism's fundamental identity amid unprecedented cultural change. In a world increasingly characterized by tribal polarization, does the Church's future lie in clear boundary maintenance, expansive inclusion, or some more nuanced position? This question transcends particular policy debates to address Catholicism's essential nature as both community of defined belief and universal spiritual home. Several cardinals have emerged as potential papal candidates, each representing different visions for Catholicism's future. While conclaves notoriously defy predictions, with the saying, "He who enters as pope leaves as cardinal," highlighting their unpredictability, certain figures have gained attention for their potential to shape the Church's next chapter. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna represents the continuity option most aligned with Francis's pastoral approach. His leadership in the Italian Bishops' Conference and deep involvement with the community of Sant'Egidio, a Catholic social service organization, embodies Francis's emphasis on serving marginalized populations. His appointment as Francis's personal envoy for peace negotiations in Ukraine demonstrated papal confidence in his diplomatic abilities, a quality historically valued in potential popes. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, former Archbishop of Manila and current pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, combines global South perspective with Vatican administrative experience. His communication skills and theological depth have earned him the nickname Asian Francis for his similar pastoral style emphasizing mercy. His relative youth, 67, could appeal to cardinals seeking a potentially lengthy pontificate to consolidate Francis's reforms. Cardinal Peter Erdo of Hungary presents a more traditionalist option while maintaining bridges with diverse factions. His background as a canon lawyer and respected theologian appeals to those seeking doctrinal clarity, while his reputation for diplomatic skill and intellectual nuance prevents easy ideological categorization. As a European from a post-communist country, he represents a perspective shaped by both ancient Catholic culture and experience under hostile secular regimes. Cardinal Jean-Claude Hollerich of Luxembourg has gained prominence through his leadership of the European Bishops' Conference and role as Relator General for the Synod on Synodality. His Jesuit background and alignment with Francis's vision suggest continuity, while his experience in Japan and fluency in multiple languages provide global perspective beyond his European roots. Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Vienna represents potential bridge building between factions. As a Dominican theologian who helped draft the Catechism under John Paul II, while later demonstrating pastoral flexibility similar to Francis, he embodies theological continuity with pastoral adaptation. Though his age, 79, would normally be prohibitive, his unique combination of intellectual depth and pastoral sensitivity might overcome this limitation. Beyond specific candidates, several factors will likely influence cardinal electors' discernment. The global church faces unprecedented challenges requiring distinctive leadership qualities. Secularization in traditional Catholic strongholds continues accelerating, with practice rates below 10% in many European countries that once formed Catholicism's core. Meanwhile, growth continues in Africa and parts of Asia, creating demographic shifts with significant implications for Catholic priorities. Internal church polarization presents another crucial consideration. The division between progressive and traditionalist Catholic communities has intensified during Francis's papacy, with some parishes and dioceses functioning almost as parallel churches with different liturgical practices, catechetical approaches, and pastoral emphases. Finding leadership capable of addressing this fragmentation while maintaining essential unity represents perhaps the Conclave's greatest challenge. The abuse crisis continues requiring attention despite significant reforms implemented under Benedict XVI and Francis. While protection protocols have improved substantially, the crisis of trust remains an ongoing challenge requiring leadership with both moral credibility and administrative skill to ensure accountability while promoting healing. Relationship with other Christian communities and faith traditions will influence deliberations as well. Francis's unprecedented outreach to Muslim leaders, historic meeting with the Russian Orthodox Patriarch, and engagement with Jewish communities built on his predecessor's ecumenical efforts while expanding their scope. His successor will determine whether these initiatives represent continuing priorities or give way to greater focus on Catholic distinctives. Vatican financial reform presents another significant consideration. Francis has implemented substantial changes to Vatican financial structures, increasing transparency and accountability while facing significant internal resistance. The next pope will determine whether these reforms continue, accelerate, or potentially face rollback from institutional forces resistant to financial oversight. The Church's approach to global challenges, including climate change, migration, and economic inequality, will undoubtedly factor into deliberations. Francis's emphasis on these issues through major encyclicals like Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti established them as central Catholic concerns. His successor will determine whether these remain priorities or give way to greater focus on theological and moral questions traditionally emphasized by his predecessors. The conclave's timing will significantly influence its dynamics and outcome. Should Pope Francis complete his anticipated visit to the 2025 Jubilee Year celebrations before a transition, this major event could serve as a capstone to his pontificate, potentially strengthening continuity candidates who would build directly on his legacy. Conversely, an earlier transition amid ongoing synod implementation might create greater uncertainty about whether to continue or modify this consultative approach. Traditional Catholic communities view the upcoming conclave with particular intensity. For many who have expressed concern about certain directions during Francis's papacy, the next papal selection represents what some describe as a crucial juncture for the Church's future. Cardinal Joseph Zen of Hong Kong has spoken about the need for the next pope to provide greater doctrinal clarity while maintaining pastoral sensitivity, a perspective shared by many traditionalists seeking balance between these priorities. Progressive Catholic voices emphasize different priorities for the next conclave. Organizations like the Association of U.S. Catholic Priests have expressed hope for leadership that will expand Francis's consultative approach and continue emphasis on social justice, ecological concerns, and pastoral flexibility. Their vision includes potentially reconsidering certain disciplinary practices regarding ministerial celibacy and expanded roles for women in church leadership. Geographical considerations will undoubtedly influence cardinal electors' deliberations. The possibility of the first African pope has gained increased attention, with Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana and Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo of Democratic Republic of Congo mentioned as potential candidates. An African pontiff would represent Catholicism's dramatic growth on that continent, while potentially bringing distinctive theological synthesis, combining doctrinal conservatism with progressive economic perspectives. Similarly, the prospect of the first Asian pope has entered serious conclave discussions. Beyond Cardinal Tagle, figures like Cardinal Oswald Gracias of India bring leadership experience in the world's second-largest population center. An Asian pontiff would symbolize Catholicism's increasingly global character, while potentially offering approaches to religious pluralism shaped by experience in predominantly non-Christian contexts. The question of age has become increasingly significant in conclave considerations following Benedict XVI's historic 2013 resignation. While previous conclaves often favored older cardinals as transitional figures, Benedict's resignation established precedent that continuing physical limitations need not be endured indefinitely. This precedent might encourage cardinal electors to consider younger candidates capable of longer, more energetic pontificates, rather than prioritizing wisdom that comes with advanced age. Language abilities and communication skills represent increasingly important factors in modern papal selection. In a globally connected church requiring engagement with diverse cultures, linguistic versatility and effective communication have become essential leadership qualities. Cardinals from regions where multilingualism is common, particularly Africa and Europe, may have advantages in this regard. Vatican administrative experience has traditionally factored into conclave considerations, with service in major curial departments often viewed as valuable preparation for papal leadership. Francis's selection represented partial departure from this pattern, as he had minimal Vatican experience before his election. Whether cardinal electors will prioritize curial experience in the next conclave remains an open question, potentially influenced by their assessment of Francis's administrative effectiveness despite his outsider background. The conclave will occur amid unprecedented global challenges that transcend ecclesiastical concerns. Climate change, international migration, economic inequality, artificial intelligence ethics, and geopolitical tensions create a complex external environment requiring sophisticated papal engagement. Cardinal electors will likely consider candidates' capacity to address these issues effectively while maintaining the Church's distinct spiritual mission rather than becoming merely another non-governmental organization. Internal church trends create equally significant context for the conclave. Declining religious practice in Western nations continues accelerating, with sacramental participation reaching historic lows in many traditionally Catholic countries. Meanwhile, priest shortages increasingly strain parish structures, with many communities experiencing Sunday worship without ordained leadership. These practical challenges will influence deliberations about whether continuity or significant adaptation better serves Catholicism's future. The conclave will also address the Church's relationship with both secular authority and diverse religious traditions. Francis has maintained Vatican independence while engaging constructively with international organizations on shared humanitarian concerns. His unprecedented outreach to Muslim leaders, particularly through relationship with Grand Imam Ahmad al-Tayyib, established new interfaith possibilities, while prompting questions from some about theological clarity regarding religious differences. His successor will determine whether these initiatives represent continuing priorities or give way to approaches emphasizing Catholic distinctiveness. Most fundamentally, the conclave will discern Catholicism's appropriate stance toward contemporary culture, prophetic challenge, selective adaptation, or some synthesis of these approaches. Francis has demonstrated willingness to challenge economic and environmental practices while showing flexibility on certain pastoral questions. This complex engagement has created both new dialogue opportunities and internal tensions his successor must address. As the Church approaches this momentous transition, several balanced perspectives emerge regarding its potential significance. While interpretations vary widely across Catholic communities, certain themes transcend ideological divisions to address fundamental questions about Catholicism's nature and future direction. For traditionalist Catholics concerned about aspects of Francis's papacy, the upcoming conclave represents an opportunity for course adjustment rather than dramatic reversal. Cardinal Gerhard Müller, former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, has articulated this nuanced position. The next pope should maintain Francis's emphasis on mercy and outreach while providing clearer doctrinal parameters. This balanced approach recognizes both continuity with Francis's pastoral contributions and potential areas requiring greater theological precision. Progressive Catholic voices similarly recognize that effective church leadership requires both innovation and tradition. Sister Natalie Beckart, Undersecretary of the Synod of Bishops and the highest-ranking woman in Vatican leadership, has emphasized that authentic renewal always builds upon foundation, developing rather than discarding essential Catholic principles. This perspective acknowledges that effective church leadership synthesizes continuity and development rather than prioritizing either exclusively. What unites many Catholics across ideological perspectives is recognition that the Church faces unprecedented challenges requiring leadership with both fidelity to tradition and creative engagement with contemporary realities. Declining religious practice in Western nations, growth in the global South, technological disruptions, and environmental challenges create complex contexts that defy simplistic approaches. The next pope must navigate these dynamics while maintaining Catholicism's essential identity amid tremendous cultural pressures. Several distinctive characteristics will likely distinguish the next conclave from its predecessors. First, the cardinal-elector's unprecedented geographic diversity will bring perspectives shaped by different cultural contexts and pastoral challenges. African cardinals experiencing church growth amid interfaith tensions, Latin American cardinals navigating extreme economic inequality, and Asian cardinals ministering in predominantly non-Christian settings bring experiences that transcend European theological categories. Second, the polarization within Catholicism itself creates unprecedented context for papal selection. While the Church has always contained diverse perspectives, digital communication and declining institutional deference have intensified these divisions. Cardinal electors must consider candidates capable of addressing this fragmentation while maintaining essential unity, perhaps the conclave's greatest challenge. Third, the example of Benedict XVI's historic resignation potentially changes calculations regarding age and health. While advanced age was once considered advantageous for its accumulated wisdom, Benedict's decision established precedent that papal ministry need not continue despite serious physical limitations. This precedent might encourage selection of younger candidates capable of more energetic and potentially longer leadership. Beyond these contextual factors, the conclave will address fundamental questions about Catholicism's engagement with contemporary challenges. How should ancient tradition inform responses to unprecedented technological developments like artificial intelligence? When do prophetic stances on economic and environmental issues require challenging political structures? How might unchanging doctrine find fresh expression in rapidly evolving cultural contexts? These questions transcend simple progressive, conservative divisions to address Catholicism's essential character. For Catholic communities navigating these transitions, several spiritual approaches emerge from the Church's tradition. First, intensified prayer represents essential preparation for this significant moment. Throughout Church history, prayer has preceded major transitions, creating spiritual foundation for discernment. Many Catholic parishes worldwide have instituted special prayer intentions for the cardinal elector's guidance whenever the conclave occurs. Second, historical perspective provides important context for current transitions. The Church has navigated numerous challenging periods throughout its history, experiencing both institutional crises and remarkable renewals. This historical awareness neither minimizes current challenges nor succumbs to apocalyptic fear, but recognizes God's continued guidance through human instruments despite their limitations. Third, focus on local Catholic community maintains spiritual grounding amid institutional transitions. While papal leadership significantly influences global Catholicism, the Church's fundamental reality exists in local parishes where sacraments are celebrated, formation occurs, and service happens. This local emphasis provides stability during leadership changes at higher institutional levels. The conclave's outcome will significantly influence not just Catholicism, but potentially broader religious engagement with society's most pressing challenges. As the world's largest unified religious institution, with global presence across cultures, Catholic leadership shapes how religious perspectives inform public discourse on issues from technological ethics to environmental stewardship, economic systems to human rights. The next Pope will guide this engagement during a period of unprecedented global challenges. For traditionalist Catholics who have expressed concern about certain directions during Francis's papacy, the upcoming conclave represents what some view as a crucial juncture for reaffirming clear doctrinal boundaries while maintaining pastoral sensitivity. For progressive Catholics, energized by Francis's emphasis on mercy and social justice, the conclave offers opportunity to solidify these priorities within institutional structures. What transcends these different perspectives is recognition that effective Catholic leadership requires both fidelity to tradition and creative engagement with contemporary realities. The most effective popes throughout history have embodied this dynamic balance, preserving essential Catholic principles while applying them to new circumstances with pastoral wisdom. This integration of continuity and development, rather than emphasizing either exclusively, represents the perennial challenge of papal leadership. As the Church approaches this momentous transition, Catholics across ideological perspectives are engaged in unprecedented prayer and reflection about their community's future. Cardinal Blas Kupich of Chicago captured this sense of hopeful anticipation. The Holy Spirit has guided the Church through countless transitions throughout history. Our responsibility is faithful participation in this continuing journey, trusting that divine guidance continues leading Christ's people toward greater fidelity and more effective witness in a world hungry for authentic spiritual leadership. Like, share, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts on what qualities you believe will be most important in the next Pope. How might effective papal leadership balance tradition and innovation while addressing unprecedented global challenges? The Church's vitality depends not primarily on particular leaders, but on maintaining living connection between ancient wisdom and contemporary questions, a relationship requiring both faithful preservation and creative application. The most effective religious leadership embodies both deep roots and new growth, neither clinging to fossilized forms nor chasing transient cultural trends. Timothy Keller.